Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first webinar of 2017. My name is Dominic, and before I introduce my manager and Risk Authority Director, Dr Jim Glockling, who's the presenter for today's session, just a few housekeeping items of note. If any attendee has any technical, IT or sound issues with today's webinar, please use the Q&A panel and I'll do my very best to assist you. During the presentation, all participants will remain in listen-only mode. We encourage you to submit written questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your screen. After typing your questions in the space at the bottom, hit the send button, and please be sure to direct your questions to all panelists in the drop-down menu. Your questions will not be seen by any other members of the audience and will be addressed, time permitting, towards the end of the session. So with no further delay, I'm pleased to hand you over to Jim.
Right, good morning everyone, and thank you very much for tuning in. We've had a very healthy 250 people subscribe for this webinar. Now what I'd like to describe today is an output of the Intervention and Monitoring Risk Authority Working Group, and very grateful to all the members of that group and the insurers who allow them to attend for the efforts put in to create this deliverable. Now, this is the first webinar that we're actually doing with live demonstration, in that we will be referring live to websites. So it may appear slightly clunky. I feel that to present this just from slides alone probably doesn't give a demonstration that is a good one of the true power of this as a system. Now, we've been playing with this over the last half hour, and we've just managed to panic ourselves quite a lot, but hopefully things will go well. The webinar is recorded and will be available for download through the Risk Authority website. Right, so without further ado, this as a webinar, really the audience for this is really the Risk Authority insurer membership to describe this toolkit. But we do see this as a very attractive reason for joining Risk Authority also. And so hopefully this could help to draw in non-member insurers. And also great interest has been expressed by regional brokers for this also for some quite obvious reasons. In discussions with the Risk Authority executive, we may take steps to include them under a different membership scheme within it. Now, in a nutshell, this tool, we believe, acts as really an intelligent transportation wrapper for all Risk Authority's outputs. And also we can bring in many other sources of wisdom into it as well. It's proving very popular, uptake is good, and we do recognize that this could be beneficial not just to insurers, but for every element of the supply chain that seeks to actually deliver resilience control measures. Now, I think rather than sit here describing the system and then show it at the end, I think it's probably much better if we demonstrate that now, and then I'll return to this slideshow to demonstrate the back-end technology that actually drives it and gives it intelligence. So if you'll forgive a screen change. This is the front end of the Business and Property Protection Portal. Very Google-like in its appearance in that it's very simple. This is meant for those who can actually, the decisions makers for resilience, so really aimed very much at CEOs and managing directors of companies. So it's very simple and asks for very simple information. And so in this case, through very simple drop-down menus, we ask for business name. That's really so that the report that is delivered can just be customized, so it is recognizably theirs. Business types, we have produced an improved zip code type listing so that it's simple to identify the business, and it looks at postcode, we need a postcode. And then factors which, risk control factors, which aren't characterized by business type or geographical location. And these are things such as heritage, tall buildings, suppression systems, construction. And these can be selected to augment the information transfer over to the intelligence system. And what we're trying to produce at the end of the day is a recognizably valid risk control report and advice guidance for this industry at this location. So really doing part of the job which a surveyor might normally do. If I click submit, and this is a live demonstration, so this is running in real time, and I'm hoping that the webinar system isn't slowing down our internet in this process. But basically what it's doing at the moment is taking this information, looking at a lot of big data sources which we have in place, and it's making some decisions. And here on the fly it's created a PDF document, and here it is, created for Lowerbrook Farm from the RISCAuthority website. And whilst this looks quite utilitarian in its delivery, what we have found, if it looks overproduced, then the end user may feel that it is a pre-prepared document and not customized, bespoke to them. So it's been deliberately produced to look part form. So in the top we have the input. So we said that we were an arable farm at this location, which is in the middle of nowhere in Warwickshire, and it looks like we've got a heritage farmhouse in this case. Now, using the geographical data, we can say that for this postcode, and there's big issues of granularity here, postcodes can be large and small depending on where they are. So the first point to make about these reports that they are, rather than triggers for absolute action, they are really triggers for further investigation, as obviously the position of a building within a particular postcode, these critical warnings may be relevant to a greater or lesser degree. But in this case, for this postcode, it says the property is in an environmentally sensitive area. There may be a risk of flooding. Fire and rescue service response to this area might be poor in terms of pursuit of business resilience endeavours. And it also shows that for the fire and rescue service in this county, that their response to automatic fire alarm signals might not be automatic. And it may mean that there may be delay or further actions might be required, or indeed they may be addressed by provision of lightweight vehicles to investigate. But at the end of the day, these things all flag up the fact that the response might be slow or lightweight. Now, the report is split into 5 key sections. We have section 1 shows legislative controls, and really these are sort of life safety requirements. But it's also a good place to put in any of your own document, which is really to do more with liability. Section 2 is where we recommend information against risks within the business category. So simply put, if we were putting warehousing as our type of business, that is where we would probably expect to see a document on safe recharging of forklift trucks and what have you. Section 3 is risk control guidance against risk specific to postcodes. So all of these critical warnings, we would hope to see some documentation that addresses the specific challenges of this postcode. Section 4, this is a good place to put additional requirements for things that we're pretty sure that might be needed. And we see going into things like recommendations for business continuity planning and the various software tools that might be available to support that. And in Section 5, we see the responses or guidance given to these more Boolean operators to do with the checkboxes to do with heritage, tall buildings, and suppression systems, and what have you. We also felt it important to actually demonstrate some of the intelligence background information that has gone into feeding the provision of this information. And so we take extracts from the large loss data just to show them the mean cost of fire, where the money is lost in insurance terms, because this can help focus attention also. So let's see, at the end of the day, we're looking for a report that passes the smell test, really. For this as a farm, under legislative controls, we see normal things about doing a risk assessment and use of fire detection systems, smoking at work, and all these are hot links to good quality, unbiased resources. Really, we take a best athlete approach to what goes into the library. The resilience controls against business category, again, we're farming and fishing, arable farming. it's hopefully no surprise to see that we have fire safety of farm buildings, silage and fodder, portable buildings, oxidizing materials, and things like fertilizers. And any of these can be clicked upon, and if we click upon this one, hopefully it will retrieve the document. There we go. And there it is. There's the risk control guide right there. What we're trying to avoid here is that these are links to other websites where people will need to delve further. We're trying to create here a resource library which just delivers at the press of a button. Fire safety of farm buildings, I think that comes from a CFPA Europe. Yes, it does, a CFPA Europe guideline. And so it just puts it straight into the hands of the user. Now, and finally, when we go through geographical risks, we saw from the critical warnings at the top that we might be in a flood risk area. Because fire and rescue service response might be poor, that might indicate we might like to provide information on how that business would need to be more self-sufficient, perhaps. And so we can provide information on sprinkler systems. And if I click on that one, I believe that takes us to looks like a Business Sprinkler Alliance resource on quick facts on the benefit of sprinkler systems. So I think you can see the way that it's functioning, and certainly we saw that we were in an environmentally sensitive area, so we can give pollution prevention guidelines, and I believe that one, looking at the link, comes from the Environment Agency. So hopefully you can see the power of it. Additional recommendations, these are things, maybe perhaps of secondary importance, but certainly good things to flash up in front of any business in this category at this location. And then finally, we specifically selected heritage issues associated with this property, and we can see that there are other guides to deal with that element in there. So all very simple, but I hope you can see it produces a library which looks right for the location and for the business type. To square the circle a bit longer, obviously we've highlighted the challenges to the user, we provided them a library, and we just create a few blank pages at the back so that they can respond to what actions they might propose to take in the light of this evidence. And we produce blank pages for business risk and also a blank page for each of the critical warnings. So we've highlighted that there may be a problem, that this is an environmentally sensitive area. Have they established whether it's relevant to the specific location of the property? And if they have, what do they intend to do about it? And this could make a return back to yourselves or just really a return for their own risk analysis processes. At the back of these reports, there's also just a little reminder of the elements of risk control which are mandated. These are always good things to flash up in front of any user because they are mandated, they do need to address these, and undoubtedly the insurer does benefit from these at the end of the day. Now, I do also want to just show how the tool can work for everyone else. We have the provision to create an infinite number of front ends, and it can introduce your own libraries also of information. So here we have exactly the same input data, but through the ecclesiastical website, and if I click submit there, it will produce a report which is identical in every way, except the library may be augmented with Ecclesiastical's own documentation suite. And we can apply the similar sorts of triggers. There is also another process by where we can, here we go, it's opened up now. And I think when we look at the documentation, here we are, and you can see that we can also bring in Ecclesiastical's more liability guides, reporting accidents, anything with Ecclesiastical after it has been specifically selected because we have come through Ecclesiastical's portal. And I think you can see how that propagates throughout the report. They have their own guide, environmental protection, and again, it makes it readily accessible by hot link straight back to their website. Part of the portal is we do not host anything, we draw it from other locations. So the RISCAuthority or FBA guides, which are open, available, and best athlete, we will take from those locations. Your own, we are only taking them from places, if you like, making them perhaps more accessible than they would otherwise be. So I'm going to return to the presentation now, as quickly as I possibly can. And so hopefully that gives you a good indication of what we were doing. The important thing here is we are looking to cover all perils, and as I said before, there's no reason why liability guides cannot be additionally included. I mentioned the supply chain. We're very good in the UK for having a very highly developed supply chain, to support the enlightenment in terms of business resilience. And that we obviously have very knowledgeable and capable insurers, fire and rescue services, who we're seeing an increasing interest in extending their role to preserving the viability of businesses on their patch also. We have groupings of membership organizations, service providers, product suppliers, good standards organizations and certification bodies to ensure really the through-life quality of the services and the equipment of anything installed to address resilience issues. That goes all the way through fire, flood, security, and what have you. But really, the system is really currently broken, and it's very frustrating. And I think we all know this, and every part of the supply chain is acutely aware of this. Anything that is not mandated within the UK is generally a nice to have that in these cost-conscious times are generally left out entirely. And we see time and time again statistics being produced about how many businesses, certainly the SME area, actually have a business continuity plan, and it's worryingly small. And we do see that effort can generally stop at mandated life safety requirements, and really those in a position to make change don't. And even some of the best initiatives to demonstrate benefit, and I can cite the Business Sprinkler Alliance work recently on sprinkler warehouse protection, and by however you choose to cut this up on a financial basis or an environmental basis, the protection of warehouses with a sprinkler system rewards you back in spades, even at some quite small sort of floor areas and costs. And yet, at the end of the day, it doesn't happen unless an insurer really wants to see it there. And we know that insurers, obviously, if you ask for too much, you could lose many of your customers pretty quickly, I'm sure. There is a role that we have seen for fire engineers or value engineering, really to even engineer out the incidentally introduced fire protection in the name of cost that building out of certain materials might introduce, or certain laws which might introduce also. So we're in a very difficult situation, and even when we do an analysis of RISCAuthority as to how many touch points we have and downloads of information, you can see that actually we're sort of failing, and hence we adopted this initiative to really try and sort things out once and for all. But in the UK, I think 10 out of 10 for life safety. Very few people die in the commercial environment in the UK. But business resilience, there is still some way to go. And even initiatives to get sprinklers into schools, at the end of the day, have by and large failed. So enforcement is lovely if it can be made to happen, but who can actually do anything? Well, in this respect, the government is out of the equation. The last mandated requirements for property protection stopped with the removal of the local acts in 2015. But they are happy to sort of support initiatives that really ally with normal sort of business practices and normal business drivers. But mandation is out of the question. We mentioned your own areas of insurers, and really we have a very soft market with low pricing, and ask for too much, and obviously you could risk losing your customers. It only really leaves the CEOs and managing directors of a company. Resilience is firmly in their job description, but many act as if they don't know it. Really, when you go to the Companies House website, they've only got 3 things to do. Make profit, try not to kill their employees, and really act in the best long-term interests of the stakeholders and their employees and the company itself. And that actually is resilience, but it's the unaddressed element of the 3. And really, we see some tragic statistics for what happens when major instances happen, be they fire or flood, and how many businesses actually cease trading within a period afterwards. And it does frustrate me that in the press, everyone's very sympathetic towards this. But if we are taking a harder line, we really can say that it is a indication of mismanagement by the management team and the board. Really, fires happen, floods happen, they can all be prepared for if there's the will to do so, but the problem is that many don't. And when we look back at history as to some of the recent history of some of the things that we've seen, you know, there are good decisions to make and there are bad decisions to make. So things like this, I remember the chemistry laboratory built out of timber, which that burnt down during construction. I believe it's going back up in timber. But this is a case of really a high hazard process being conducted in a building for which you could imagine products better suited to hosting it. Put together two insurer nightmares, possibly, timber frame construction and waste recycling, and you get something akin to, an issue, and we'll wait to see how it unfolds. And obviously we see, in the name of sustainability, increasingly we're seeing buildings clad in combustible external cladding materials. And obviously there's scope to really extend the spread of fire to encompass whole buildings, whereas previously not, or with a better decision made of choice of materials, something better could be done. So really, how do we put this information into the hands of managing directors so that they can actually make these more informed choices? And really, the starting process, we think, is, and where people generally fall over, is really you need to put the case with the same rigor and evidence that a managing director would receive any other case for decision-making and investment. And we believe that with the Business and Property Protection Portal, we can quickly demonstrate that it is powered by some background intelligence from big data. The data is coming from trusted and independent organizations, and it's put in a form that is meaningful to them, instantly recognizable and transportable. So we see, and also I think the better the data, the better the way we can do this, the less we will be delivering to them. And that can only be a good thing at the end of the day. People don't have tolerance for reading reams of paper anymore. Now, the way the system actually works is quite simple. At the top of the screen, you see the inputs, which we displayed. Very simple inputs. And it's probably worth noting here that to increase the palatability of this tool across the widest audience possible, there are no logins for this. We do not hold any data or keep any data or contact anyone. We take no contact details or whatever. This is meant to be an honest tool to get the right information to those who most need it. So accessibility is a key element here, and we want to reduce the number of reasons for putting anyone off using it. Having put in that data, our risk engine goes away and has a look at the sources of data. And as you saw, if the postcode's in a floodplain, then we can take across that we need to produce something about flood. If it says that crime of a certain type is prevalent, then let's give some guidance to address that. If they put in a business type that the large loss statistics are telling us are prone to having firefighting response impaired by the presence of acetylene, then let's give a guide on acetylene. I think you can see the way this works. Likewise for fire and rescue service response, if we feel the weight and time of response might be inadequate in terms of property protection, then let's give advice about that. So having looked at all the data on the left-hand side of the screen, we then form a view, and then we go to our sources of guidance. And really, these can be infinite. The library system, we have a universal library set, which we take from many sources, but it has to be totally unbiased, and it has to be of high quality. And so instantly we look to our own risk control guides, security guides, everything that RISCAuthority outputs. We look to CFPA Europe. We look to places like the Environment Agency, government, fire and rescue services have some very good information as well. So the universal library set takes them there. We take the best documents, and then we have a delivery engine which takes it through a very good and very clever Azure hosted report designer. We produce the report, and as you can see, we deliver it as a simple PDF at the end of the day. And whilst doing this is only one part. This is only one part of the equation. We've got to recognise here that across the UK, basically no one's heard of FPA, no one's heard of RISCAuthority, so they're not going to come looking from us. There are places that the people we're trying to engage with where they will go in preference to going to the effort of seeking out the FPA RISCAuthority. And those organisations might be providers of services to them that they already engage with, might be their insurer, might be their local fire and rescue service, it might be their local council, it might be their local resilience forum. And so this toolkit has been built with a means of having an infinite front ends, which essentially all deliver the universal data set, but may be augmented with an additional library set from the website of origin. And I think this could give us a shop front which will really take us miles closer to achieving our ambition of being the place to go, or the information suite that needs delivering for resilience within the UK. Now, the data sets we draw upon, which gives it the intelligence in the background, I would like to demonstrate to you. If you're not familiar with these, it's certainly worth logging into the RISCAuthority website and having a play with them. I'll demonstrate them in a moment. But we have our Fire and Rescue Service response tool. This is probably the most advanced, one of the most advanced response delivery tools probably in the world. It's very, very capable, and with the assistance of the UK Fire and Service, who have been very good about delivering data to us on this, it is kept very up to date. We also have the invaluable resource of the insurer large loss statistics. Now, many of you may not have gone into the back end to play with graphing and the analysis suites, but you may be more familiar with the business sector risk view reports that we update regularly that embed the wisdom and what it's telling us from this data set. We also have the Informer database, which is if you haven't played with this, do have a look, a postcode-based, if you like, upmystreet.com for risk. In a given area, it reports crime statistics, fire and rescue service response, flood, using many data sets to really feed for each of the 1.8 million postcodes in the UK. It feeds a sort of 800 numbers that get populated, which really can describe a place very well without actually having to go there. And the final database that we draw upon is the AFA policy database, which describes each of the 40-odd fire and rescue services response policies to automatic fire alarms, which obviously range from full turnout on receiving one to no turnout at all until a 999 call is delivered. All important stuff to know. So with that, I would just like to show you, I hope this doesn't appear too clunky, the types of these data sources. The Fire and Rescue Service Response Tool is beautifully mapped. And so for the example we gave before, which gave of the farm at CV36 5JJ, if we put that into here, it will hopefully put a pin in the map if our internet system isn't going too slowly. There we go. We can, if we have a premises that we think, or a business type that might need 4 fire engines turning up there, and we think they need to get there, well, we'd like to look at the times it would take for them to get there. The black areas of the map, or the darker areas, are where provision can't be made within the slider time, and the light areas are. So here we're looking at a fire and rescue service response that can deliver 4 engines to that location in 19 minutes, 15 seconds. It's a very powerful tool for understanding things. That's with traffic modeling. If we use national road speed limits, we can take that off, and it paints a nicer picture. And it works for every day of the week, day of the year. So within the toolkit, we can set triggers for each business type as to what we think an appropriate weight of response and time of response is to be of value to the protection of the property. In association with this, we also have the AFA response tool, and very simple, we list all the fire and rescue services for the UK, and if we look at Warwickshire, click on Warwickshire, and it will tell you the, there we go, the response type for Warwickshire. And this gives us a Monday to Friday and weekend response profile. So what this is telling us is that for residential dwellings, so basically for the normal person in their home, it's an immediate response if they receive an AFA. But for commercial type premises and some healthcare premises, during the day there'll be no attendance for an unconfirmed AFA, but at night time in commercial standard risk properties they may be call challenging or some filtering. So very invaluable data to know, but this can be very different for each of the fire and rescue services. As you can see, very varied. They're basically the same number of combinations as there are fire and rescue services. And it's vital to know this, otherwise obviously your customers could be standing outside of their building with the alarms going off, successfully evacuated, thinking that the fire service is going to turn up when actually further actions are required. Now, we also mentioned the business sector risk review reports, which is an aggregation of the large loss data, and these are very, I think these are the most downloaded documents from our website, very popular. There are about 80 of them. We'll be reproducing them in about 4 weeks' time with updated information. But I think you can see that this is invaluable information for triggering documentation on, as it tells us whether fires in this, for this type of business, in this case we are looking at industrial manufacturing, whether it's accidental or deliberate. The time of the fire, and that can hint towards arson or delivery of documentation on out-of-hours operation of machinery, and also impedances to firefighting. In this case, we see acetylene featuring quite heavily, so we might provide some information on that for this type of premises, type of business type. Adequate water supplies, inadequate water supplies featuring very heavily there, and so we might do something with that. Similarly, we include financial data as well, and this is very important. Again, we can provide triggers that if business interruption is greater than material damage, then let's give people some business continuity software planning tools and also tell them why it's important. Finally, I think I'd like to just show you the Informer database. So I think it might be hidden behind. I'm just going to have to shrink my machine down. I think that's hidden behind. Yes, there we go. The WebEx thing. So the Informer database, again, it's under Insurer Tools on the RISCAuthority website, and we can put in any postcode, SE1HND as a London postcode. We can assign an occupancy type to it, which will draw in additional information. And it's a very utilitarian report that it produces, but if you haven't had a play with this, please do. Most people start with a home postcode and see if the environment that they live in is recognizable from the report. But here we are, it's opened up a report, and here is a suite of numbers which can help describe that place. So it tells us about the responsibilities for fire authority and police authorities, tells us a split between domestic and residential within that postcode. This one's interesting because it says we have vertical streets, meaning that there are tall buildings there. Postcodes generally are to deliver to 17 drop-off points, typically. It's a funny unit to use, but it is about dropping off letters, and they are equally applicable to if buildings are tall. And you may find that the postcode changes with every 4 or 5 floors in a tall building. So the fact that it's flagged up 2, we know a little bit more about the place because there are tall buildings. It tells you about local infrastructure, crime data, road traffic data, flood data, environmental data, whether it falls into any of the 16 categories for environmental protection. I won't dwell on this, but I think you can see it's a wealth of information, which if you take the time to look at it, can really help you get a good handle on the place. Let's see, to give you an idea of whether these what these numbers actually mean. If we look at antisocial behavior, we have best part of 20,000 cases within a 2-year period, within the 2 kilometers of the center of the postcode. What does that mean to us? Well, we can look in the back of this report. You can see there are a lot of numbers there, including fire response, where all fire engines come from at a given time, other information that we've seen. But we get to all the 2011 census data, but then we get the statistics at the back. So if we look at crime in 2 kilometers, antisocial behavior, we can see that the mean is actually 2,000. Well, we had 20,000 there. So we know that antisocial behavior at this postcode is meaningful and maybe something which we might like to deliver some additional advice against. And in the case of the portal, we deliver advice against arson and vandalism, against these sorts of triggers. So that's the back-end data. I hope it was worthwhile having a look through that. That's the last little foray into the web, so hopefully this will be a bit slicker from here on in. So we mentioned triggers. We have triggers to do with business, and these are very simple. If it's a warehouse, let's deliver something on forklift truck and maybe shrink wrapping machines, protection of those. If it's a school, let's deliver something specific to school. So they can be very simple. But from the statistics for each business, we know when there are challenges of lack of water, acetylene, time of day, and we will only deliver documents against this if they are relevant, if the data is telling us that we should be doing something on that. Geographical triggers, fire and rescue service response, obviously AFA policy, criminal damage, theft and robbery. We have 16 categories of crime, and for each of those, 4 of them really describe criminal damage, another 4 describe theft and robbery. And so we can produce triggers. If a shop is selected and we see that shoplifting is particularly high there, then we can deliver a guide against it. And the most important thing here is the triggers are designed to not deliver resources or documentation where it is not thought to be relevant. Flood, environmental, and protected underground water supplies also are dealt geographically. And then we have these 6 categories of overriders: construction, void buildings, heritage, suppression, tall buildings, server and EDP rooms. Now these are in here because they are nothing to do with the business type or the type of building it might be in, or geographical triggers. It used to be the case that you could assume that businesses of a certain type would have a server and EDP room, but that's not the case now. And since the documents that need to be delivered for the protection of a server room are quite weighty, I don't want to deliver them where they're not actually necessary. Many organizations are obviously now becoming cloud-based, and instead of a server room, obviously they just have routers in the corner of their office. So to account for that, we don't want to over-deliver, then these overriders are very useful. Now the triggering systems themselves can be simple Boolean ones. These are sort of yes, no. If business type is warehouse, deliver a forklift truck safe use guide. If the empty building checkbox is yes, deliver guidance on void buildings and for their fire and security option. Then we have simple conditional. If the large loss statistics show that acetylene is a hindrance to firefighting in more than 30% of losses, let's deliver the acetylene guide. If criminal damage at this postcode is greater than 3 times the mean for the country, then let's deliver guidance on vandalism and arson protection. And then we can get into some quite complex ones as well, which can deliver very focused documentation. So if we see that perhaps heritage is identified as being yes, and they've got a problem with empty buildings, well, there is actually a guide on empty heritage building protection. So I think you can see there that that's a very useful document to deliver to someone with those challenges, but we shouldn't be delivering an empty building protection guide to someone who's got an occupied heritage building. And likewise, we shouldn't be building an empty building protection guide to someone whose building is an office block and not of heritage value. So we can go to some quite complex conditional terms within the data sets that we have. What can actually be resources? We need to obviously think less of paper, although we do have a wealth of information still within electronic guides. But it can be videos, which can be much more informative for describing the benefits of, say, sprinkler systems and other forms of protection. We can point them in directions of webinars on specific issues, software like a robust business business continuity software toolkit, web pages of products and services, and even your own, and recordings also. So it's really anything that can be addressed via a web link. Library management. The RISCAuthority site will always just deliver the universal library, which will be rigorously maintained as being unbiased and of high quality. And anyone coming through this portal will see the universal library, triggers will be allocated, and it will deliver a report. If anyone is coming through an insurer portal, then there is the opportunity, the same inputs go in, but the library of information that we quizzed will be the universal library in association with your own documentation that you would like to become part of this scheme. And then we have an important module, which is a resource impairment module. So beside every, when your own resources are loaded on, if you would like that to then impair an element of the universal library because it either duplicates or you disagree with the content of the universal library, that can be done. So at the end of the day, what gets taken forward with the triggers is a library set that you are happy with, that takes the best from the universal library set and correctly places your own documentation within the context of that. Very powerful. I think we've seen the nature of the reports, a hot-linked library of intelligently selected risk control guides, products, services, whatever, really personalized to the business type and geography. The other thing that I didn't point out at the time is from the website of origin carries the logos of the outputted report carries the logo of the website of origin. Maybe if I would just highlight that again by just dropping out, let's see if I've got the ecclesiastical output. Sorry, I think I'm once again falling underneath. There we go. If I go back on here, you'll see the ecclesiastical logos up there. And if your own company, the same would happen for the logo of your own company. So just returning back again, you get, I think, oops, apologies. Right, so overall benefit. I'm probably not the best to describe these. I think you probably are, as you know your business is much better than I do. But this was produced by the Intervention Monitoring Group with something in mind, and really it's a cost-effective way of preserving some of the risk control engagement, preserving the risk control engagement with customers, where perhaps changes in policy mean visits are less frequent or may even cease. We're acutely aware that there seems to be a raising of risk survey thresholds, and maybe this can start to fill in some of the gaps. It's not the full picture, obviously. I assume there are probably sort of three parts. Yes, the geographical risk factors are important, and it can address those. The general known risk to do with business type, they are known, and it can deal with that. What it will never be able to deal with is obviously the on-the-spot, how the specific company is managing and their particular circumstances on the shop floor. So we can never replace that element of it. But another use of it is may cover off many of the bases pre-visit. And so if the customer is already in receipt of this before a visit, they are sort of informed about the geographical and the generic business type challenges, and that may enable a surveyor to be really more efficient, spending their time on site, looking at the residual specific challenges left. Certainly, as a system for delivering information, it can do this very efficiently and perhaps can reduce some of the burden of the systems that you currently use to do it, such as emailing out. It's got the benefit of delivering a recognized industry standard guidance, which may be augmented or replaced with your own in-house documentation without compromise. I think you'll see that with that, with the module that we've created to disable parts of the universal data set in favor of your own documentation, there's no compromise. We should never be in a situation where you're delivering guidance that you don't agree with. I'm hoping that this sort of report will be meaningful to managing directors and will assist with prompting them into action. And I think this can be attributed to really this is giving them access to some of the sorts of tools and methods that you use to determine risk, and maybe coming from organizations like FPA and RISCAuthority, this will help point out that these are known features that need addressing, and it's not just your insurer being awkward. The other thing they were trying to break down the grudge purchase element of resilience promotion. Now, when I've been around promoting this, there seems to be a large appetite for this, and it's very good to see. But clearly, others are seeing others' uses for it as well, and certainly we've been asked to produce APIs for this so that they may be embedded as internally used tools for early identification of potential risk controls, and perhaps to assist with the communication of that between the risk control and underwriting elements of insurance. And I can confirm that we have produced APIs to enable that. The launch process, if you'd like to go with this, is quite simple. Really, within a matter of minutes, if we receive a logo and corporate colors, we can have a website up and running that is fully functioning with the universal data set. That takes no time whatsoever. The later thing to do is to give us an idea via sort of a hot-linked list, if you like, of the resources that you would like to build your own library set with. And we will embed those, obviously, with no triggers initially, but then I think probably round a table, perhaps taking a couple of hours with yourselves, we can assign all the appropriate triggers so that it is we end up with a fully working version of the site. We built this with a mind to make this process very simple, and indeed we seem to have succeeded on that. The next steps, really contact us to discuss your requirements if you'd like to, if there's something of interest here. Deployment just is free to RISCAuthority members as a benefit, and there's a website there, that an email address there that you can contact us on with any queries, or obviously if you've got your representative on the intervention and monitoring group, I'm sure that they could assist also. So I think that's all I'd like to say on that. Thank you very much for listening. I think we may have some question and answers, do we? Which I will just hear from Dominic.
Yeah, we've got one question from Neil McLannan. Currently, there are various data sets missing for Scotland. Will these be available anytime soon?
Right, okay, that one we are trying to address at the moment. Scotland is unfortunately not as advanced as England and Wales are in their provision of information, particularly when it comes to flood, crime, and water source data. And we are working on it very close with the Fire and Rescue Service at the moment. And indeed, one of the things we are doing with this tool is actually making it available to the fire services because they are probably a bigger shop, certainly a bigger shop front than SPA and probably many insurers alike. And we are hoping that this will assist with the provision of information to support this tool. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are quite proactive in their support for business and property protection, and we are in regular communication with them. So I'm quite hopeful that the Informa database will be augmented with additional information from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, certainly, or from the Scottish Government, certainly to do with flood data, crime data, and I'm also hopeful of getting additional hydrant location data also, which has been promised.
Okay, we're getting a few more questions in now. This is from Sadie Bryan. Has consideration been made to include the meaning of acronyms within the report produced from the new intelligent portal, i.e. FRS?
Right. Sorry, I've got a bit of feedback. Could you just repeat that for me?
Has consideration been made to include the meaning of acronyms within the report, i.e. FRS?
Right, that is a very good response. I think we do need to have a good plain English look at what's in there at the moment, and I do take that on board, Sadie. Something else I'd like to make clear is that at the moment we have a somewhat undeveloped library set in there. And what we are in the process of now doing is producing very simple one-page guides that will cover each of the challenges and business types that we have so that there is an initial place for a user to go just to see the key elements. So if a school is put in, we have a bullet-pointed list, say the challenges with schools are X, Y, and Z, or the challenges with the printing industry are flammable inks and what have you. The challenges with heritage, I think there's one in for heritage actually, are that heritage buildings are often built of combustible materials, they are in out-of-the-way places, often difficult to find, often with poor water supplies, etc., etc. So what we have found when we do a gap analysis is that a lot of our material that we produce is really not appropriate for the audience that we have here of the managing director or those with lesser knowledge and not in the correct form. So a lot of effort is now going into producing really a suite of between 180 and 200 one-page data sheets to address each of the issues that we have, each of the business types and the warnings. And just as we need to be inventive about that, I would encourage yourselves and your own library sets to get inventive also when being delivered, when being delivered through this as a mechanism. I mean, you will, you can make this as intelligent as you like just by being really, quite some innovative thinking in your library set, and this can go a long way.
One more question. Yeah. This is from Lauren Lilly. Thank you, Lauren. What type of international information is available that multinational companies could benefit from?
Right. Now, that is an interesting question, and you're not the first to have raised it. Now, at the moment, we're very reliant on geographical data sets, and particularly a lot of government data. The UK, when you compare us to other countries, we sit on various European committees, we are blessed with a fantastic supply of data. I know I'm complaining about the lack of data, but that's just because I'm basically very greedy for data, but actually on the face of it, we have unparalleled sources of data from the Fire and Rescue Service, from government, from the Environment Agency, and the like. And also augment that with the collection methods that we have for the large loss statistics via the loss adjuster route. This is something that other countries just within Europe just simply do not have. So whilst we have a model here that could be applied to any country, I think the greatest issue here is the supply of information from those other countries. It just doesn't exist. So I think, I know that we are being asked to address something. I'm not too sure it would fit within this framework, and obviously the different countries have different locational recognition methods from postcodes and what have you. But that's been set as a challenge to the Intervention Monitoring Group. I think we can certainly work on something to do with local relevance where country becomes a selector tool, and then we provide a portal for you to provide your own international library sets. But I think I'd like to get this one properly polished off and then move on then. Okay, I think that completes everything. Don't hesitate to email in if you've got any other questions that you'd like to put on us. We're very pleased with the way this is unfolding. We are spending our days currently visiting many of you, just putting the finishing touches to launching various implementations of this. We have also done a very big display to fire and rescue services and membership organizations, as we see this as a very important addition to the shop front that we have. You would probably these are generally paid for, and that money obviously will come back in to enable us to further develop the tool going forward. But we do see this as something which is now absolutely key to RISCAuthority going forward. We are expecting it to change the download history, from the current list of maybe thousands in a year to tens of thousands in a year. And if we're perfectly honest, that's where we need to be. There are 80,000 businesses in Manchester alone. So whilst we may think we're doing very well with 20,000 downloads of the business continuity software toolkit, we're not. I take that as failure, and I see this as the route to giving us a shop front where we will actually start to get all the wisdom that we produce to where it's needed. And obviously the same goes for your own library sets also. I think this is the longest webinar we've had. I hope you've tolerated it well. We're just coming up to the hour. So thank you very much from Dominic and myself, and have a very good weekend. Thank you.